All right, so in this demonstration, I want to show a few simple techniques for doing surface modeling for your chair design. So the overall goal here is to show one set of techniques that you could choose to use as you're modeling any part of your chair, but probably it's going to be the bottom or the back. In this demo, I'm going to show modeling the bottom of a chair and adding on some ergonomics using some surface modeling techniques that we're going to learn. So to start off with, I'm going to make a new sketch on the top plane. To make things simple, I'm just going to start this rectangle right at the origin, and I'm going to choose to make this chair seat 12 inches by 12 inches. We could choose any size that we want, but for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to make it 12 inches by 12 inches. I'm also going to do one thing that makes this a little bit nicer, which is I'm going to fill it off. I'm going to round off the edges, and I'm going to choose to do that specifically in the sketch here. Most of the time I suggest that when you're adding fillets, you do it in the 3D object because I think you get more control over it. But in this case, because of the way that we're going to be using edges and surfaces, you really need to do this filleting directly in here. So let's do that real quick. Let's go ahead and fillet off these two edges, and we'll do that at 2 inches radius. That seems good. And we'll do that here as well. And that looks just fine. So far I have the outline of my chair seat. Now what I really want to do is I want to make it so that I can have the inner part, the middle part of that seat, curved or dished so it's more ergonomic for when a person is sitting there so that the seat matches the contours of their body a little bit more. And to do this, what I will do is I'm going to draw some lines from the side that kind of give the profile of how much the chair dips in. And I'm going to set up a couple of sets of lines here. So I mentioned that I started this rectangle right at the origin, which means that if we look at this from the front view, you can see that my right plane is at the left edge of this sketch. What I'm going to do is add on a couple more planes in order to make sketching these contour lines a little bit more possible. So the first thing I'm going to do is, I told you that I made my chair 12 inches across, and I said that I made this fillet have a 2-inch radius. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new plane, offset from the right plane, that is 6 inches over. That's going to be exactly in the center of the chair. And then I'm also going to make another offset plane that's going to be 2 inches over. And if we look at that from the front view, you can see that that plane lands right where that fillet starts or begins, depending on how you want to look at it. Okay? So I've got those planes set up. Now I'm going to go ahead and sketch on plane 1. That's the one that is directly in the center of that first one. I'm going to go to my right view, and in order to sketch these lines so that they all connect up, I'm going to project in 2 points. So I'm going to use this point, which is just the origin, and I'm also going to use this point here, which is the back of the chair. Now what I want to do is I want to draw on a line that lets me curve or dip in that thing. I'm going to use a spline, and like I mentioned yesterday, I'm going to click once here to start the spline, and I'm just going to double click here at that projected point so that it finishes the spline right there. So this is the simplest spline possible. It just has these 2 control handles. So I could try to make this perfectly symmetrical front to back, or I could make it somewhat asymmetrical. So let's go ahead and go with that for right now. I'm going to finish that sketch. So now what you can see, I have this sketch here, and what I'm going to want this surface to do is to follow this sketch from front to back. Now, I could choose to make my surface just like this. So let's see what that looks like with just this here. I'm going to use fill, and I will choose these 4 edges here, and I have to actually add on those filleted rounded edges here as well. So if I didn't do anything else, my fill would create a perfectly flat surface there. But what I am going to choose to do is add on this option here that says guides. And for my guide, I'm going to choose this line right here. You can already see what's happening to the seat there. That surface is following the curve of that guide, and because that's the only guide I have, it makes my chair kind of dish inward front to back, and to some degree from side to side as well. Now if I want to add more control, I can add a couple more guides. So let's do that. Let's see what that would look like. This would absolutely work, but if I want more control, I can add more guides. So I'm going to make another sketch. I'm going to do it on this plane 2, which is the one that we set right as that fillet starts or ends, depending on how you look at it. I'm going to go back to my right view, and I'm going to just hide that surface for a minute, and I'm going to bring back just this sketch and this sketch for right now. Even though I can see those points, they're not in the sketch that I just started. So I'm going to project those in again. So let's use this point, and let's use this point. I'm going to go back to my spline tool, and now I'm going to draw another spline. This one, however, is in sketch 2, and what that means is that I can control that separately, right? So I could have this one come in a little bit less on the outside of the chair, so to speak. So that looks great there. And now in order to make this symmetrical, I'm going to take advantage of the fact that I've got plane 1 sitting right here in the middle, and I'm actually going to mirror that sketch. You might not know that you can, in addition to a part mirror, you can do a feature mirror. You can mirror a line or a sketch. So I'm going to click on mirror plane. I'm going to go to plane 1, which is the one I put right in the center, and you can see that that copied that sketch over across the mirror plane. So it just mirrored it across. Now if I were to grab that fill that I did and drag it down below the mirror, I can go in there and I can actually add those other guides as well. This one here and this one here. And what you should see is that I get a little bit more control over the shape of that surface. Let me turn it back on, and you can see what I mean. Now, if you decide you don't like that exact shape, you can always go back and adjust those splines. Maybe you want the edges to be really deeply dished outward. I don't know why you would want to do that. That doesn't look very comfortable to me, but you could do that. You could go back to any of those sketches, and you can adjust those splines to get whatever profile you want. Maybe you want the back to be even more deeply dished, and then that's good. Now this is still just a surface. It's not a solid object yet. To make it a solid object, a full 3D part, we need to thicken it. And so if I go ahead and click thicken on that surface, now I get my actual chair. If I hide my surface, I accidentally thickened the sketch, not the surface. So let's try that again. Let's thicken that surface. There we go. Now what you might notice is on the back of this, it has these places where it looks like it sort of twists in a weird way, and that's all driven by the curve of that initial guideline sketch. So maybe this is too sharp of a curve. Maybe I want to flatten that out a little bit more to make that geometry look a little bit nicer on the back. And I think that looks nicer right there. So that's another technique that you can use for doing surface modeling to get more complex compound shapes.